الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله وصفوته من خلقه وحبيبه بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الأمة وجاهد في سبيل دينه حتى أتاه اليقين اللهم اجزه عنا وعن والدينا وعن الإسلام والمسلمين خير ما جازيت به نبيا عن قومه ورسولا عن أمته اللهم أحينا على سنته وأمتنا على ملته واحشرنا تحت لوائه وأوردنا حوضه واسقنا من يده الشريفة شربة هنيئة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا. أما بعد, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the beginning of Surah Al-A'raf, اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء. Two commands. One is an order, the other is a prohibition. In the order he says, follow whatever has been sent down to you from your Lord. So what we need to follow is what Allah reveals to us, what Allah sends down to us. What does He send? He sent the Quran, He sent the Prophet ﷺ, He sent Jibreel to give Muhammad ﷺ the Quran. So this is what Allah is telling us to follow. What is the opposite? The opposite is to follow anyone else or anything else. And this is where the prohibition comes. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. Do not follow anyone, no matter how much allegiance you have with them. Follow your allegiance to Allah. Your commitment to Allah is what comes first. Why? Because we owe it to Him. He is our creator. He is our provider. He is the one who answers us when we call on Him. And we need to answer Him when He calls us. So this reciprocal relationship, two-way relationship, is hinged on how we respond to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And instead of following what has been sent down to us, unfortunately, humanity has been divided into several groups. Those who don't know, and you cannot ask them, Allah will ask them. And those who know and refuse either to believe in Allah or to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the third group is those who believe in Allah, but they still follow others. And this is very dangerous. When we tell Allah, we believe in you, we submit you, we love you, so give us what we ask, it is as if we believe we are entitled to what He has, but He is not entitled to what He is asking. What He orders us, we don't owe it to Him. And this is inconsistent with our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You believe in Him, you follow Him. If you follow others, that means you believe in others. You believe in their guidance, and so on and so forth. But then there is another group that neither believes in Allah or follows Him, but they claim they do. And at the same time, they are too busy focusing on the toys Allah has lent them for this life, and they are too busy playing and toying with these toys to follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what do? They live by a system that can only be described as a system of experimentation. Experimenting with everything. When we follow those people, we are not following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we do like them, we are not consistent with our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And unfortunately, because Muslims have been defeated materially and in many other ways, we think that advancement in material achievement is a sign of Allah's pleasure, that He is happy with the person or the community, that He gives more. So if He gives the West more, then we want to follow what the West has done to reach where they are. And in this, there is a huge mistake that this logic does not make clear for us, because the logic is using false assumption and false reasoning and reach a false conclusion. We want to follow the West because the West is powerful. The West is more advanced in science, technology, medicine, physics, the space research, biology, everything. So we want to follow them. But there are areas where if you follow the West, you will get the worst of what they have, but not necessarily the best. That is, if you follow their experimentation with values, for example. When values become a matter of relativity, as Western philosophies tell us, whether it is coming from the East or the West, it is the assumption that if I follow somebody who is successful and their footsteps, I will gain their achievement. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If we follow them in areas where they failed, we will gain their failure. We will not gain their success. So they successfully were able to exploit materials and tangible things by experimentation, by empirical evidence, by research. Yes, follow those areas as avid as you can. But when they experiment with values, when they experiment with faith, when they experiment with those constant issues that we rely on to have a stable life, then we are going to have an upside-down life as they do. The bigger numbers of suicide do come from the West, not the East, despite the fact that the East is poorer than the West. Less resources, less advancement, less everything. But suicide in a country, for example, like Sweden, is greater than even other European countries. While Sweden is one of the wealthiest nations. It's a small nation, but it's wealthy. So why do people commit suicide? Why do people get fed up with life? Because they are toying and experimenting with basic values. Their faith in God is either wrong-headed or wrong-founded. They wanted one-way street. They want God to give and keep giving, and for them to keep forgiving and to keep disobeying. And I'm not limiting what I'm saying to just one country. It is a culture of, I would like to be absolutely free. And this is the underpinning issue between the West and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They want a faith that does not organize their life, let alone guide it and control it. They want a faith where God is there for them and they are here for themselves. That does not work. It didn't work, it will never work. So when we want to follow them, we end up having the similar diseases that the Western societies are suffering from. Somebody may ask, how come you live here for over whatever length of years you have, and you're standing here to tell us that the West is bad? Mind you, I'm not saying the West is bad. I'm saying experimentation with established central values that keep the human society stable, productive, and happy, experimenting with those will cause instability, will cause economic chaos, will cause wars. And we have seen poor nations don't attack other nations. Only when they get enough weapons, they start attacking others. So, when we talk about experimentation, we are talking about natural human tendency. Humans, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look like children in your household. You give a child a new toy, he throws back the old toys, and he wants to experiment. What does this toy offer him that he doesn't have? We, the human society, are doing this, and we are doing it in the wrong way, producing wrong results and painful reality and suffering for everybody, and we're enjoying it. So what happens is, even weak nations, they want to align themselves with stronger nations to protect their interests. By this, they have relinquished their reliance on Allah, right? And they have given up their faith in Allah to protect them, to provide for them, and now they have to worship the bigger power. And because Allah created us to be free agents on our own behalf, Allah does not accept that we erect partners or equals with Him. When it comes to seeking help, we always read in the Fatiha, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We worship you, we only worship you. In fact, the exact translation is, you only do we worship, and you only do we seek help from. This is what we're saying, but is this what we're doing as Muslims? Everyone has to ask himself or herself, because doing otherwise will become as if we have relinquished our faith in Allah as a protector, as a supporter, as a backer who says, إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ. If you support the cause of Allah, Allah will support your cause. If you provide needs for each other, the Prophet ﷺ says, مَنْ كَانَ فِي حَاجَةِ أَخِيهِ كَانَ اللَّهُ فِي حَاجَتِهِ. If you stand for truth and justice for everybody, Allah will make everybody stand for your truth and for your justice. This is a simple formula. When we abandon and we work with our own new discovered formulas, we are wasting our life and we are wasting our resources. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where He says, اتَّبِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ, it is to make us free agents on our own behalf and only to become agents for Allah to work and execute His will, not our will. This is completely different from experimenting with life and experimenting with values. So instead of puzzling ourselves every 50 years, we discover that abortion that was okay 50 years ago is not okay today. As if Allah didn't say anything about it. As if Allah didn't tell us about life, what life is for. As if Allah didn't tell us, do not take out the life that Allah has made sacred. When we experiment with our sexual desires, so we discover that a man-woman marriage is not the only way. A man can marry another man, a woman can marry another woman, and soon enough we will find people either mating with animals or animals jumping on people. So we are really twisting the foundation for what constitutes a stable, happy family, a stable and happy life. We don't have it. We don't have it. So experimenting with science, experimenting with anything that Allah told us, go and roam the earth and discover what Allah has provided for you. And it's all subjected to your utility. Manipulate the iron and the copper and the aluminum and all other elements. Exploit all of the resources that Allah has given you, but exploit it for the good of mankind. Don't exploit it to destroy. Exploit it to develop it, to nurture it, to increase it for the next generations that are yet to come. You are a steward. You are not an owner. You are not a partner with Allah. You are not only a subservient. You are nothing that Allah has made a human. That's what the Quran says. The Quran says, هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. Has there come a time when man was nothing to mention? Nothing. That's who we are. We are nothing, and we're going to end up as nothing. And in between, we have all the power that other creations have not been given by Allah to do His bid, not to do our own bidding. We have to live His way. This is His kingdom. I know. I'm not telling anyone here anything new. But I'm recording this for those who do not come to this place, those who do not read the book you are reading. And why should I do that when you have the book and you can read it? It is actually for the assumption that it is my responsibility to share with you what do we have in the book and what it means for our life and for our faith. This is why we have to talk about those issues. Also, I know that everyone here has his or her own contacts outside the Muslim community. And this message goes beyond a Muslim to reach everybody else. We all as humans need to recognize Allah for who He is. We need to recognize our weakness, that He told us He created us from weakness into strength, then weakness again. So we experience weakness and we experience strength, then we experience weakness again when we get old and frail, sick and unable, right? So that we have everything there is to have in life. Use your weakness for your strength, and use your strength for your weakness, and use both for your other life. Don't waste any opportunity to learn, to grow. And that's why one of the sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we, no matter which stage in our life we may be, we all are subject to become sick. We all are subject to accidents. We all are subject to undesirable events, difficulties in life, shortness of resources, shortness of lives. And Allah did not hide any of that from us. Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. He is saying it with certainty. We will certainly test you. And the tests are mentioned and laid down for us, that we will suffer something of fear, something of hunger, something of shortness of produce and fruits and everything else. This is to remind us that Allah is the one who provides. Allah is the one that we should ask. Allah is the only one we should bow down to. Allah is the only one we should fear. Allah is the one we should give our maximum respect and appreciation for His majesty. This is what the message of Islam is. That we get to submit to Allah willfully. Don't you submit to Allah out of anything else. You have to come willfully in voluntary submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In voluntary submission. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called the heaven and the earth and told them to come by voluntarily or involuntarily, they said, we come voluntarily. Look how huge the heaven is. Look how huge the earth is. And Allah saying, they came in full submission with their own volition. They love Allah, so they come, respond to His call. Then Allah asks us, أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاءِ? Are you more formidable? Are you more powerful than the heaven? Definitely we are not. So when we follow a system of experimentation, as we know, in every experimentation, man tries to do everything perfectly. But because we are limited in knowledge, limited in wisdom, we end up toying in our experimentation. Okay? So the gene therapy is a toy. It is still being explored and experimented. Okay? It is like cancer treatments. People are still discovering new treatments and new ways of dealing with this plague. It is like toying with vaccination for the corona, micron, and the other mutations. So we keep experimenting, and in the process, we lose a lot. We lose a lot of people, a lot of resources, right? If we cannot experiment with those fields, we lose everything. But alhamdulillah, Allah gave those abilities to manipulate life and what it has to give to any human being who endeavors and tries. But we should never experiment with stable, constant values. The value of life is sacred. The value of values is sacred. The value of family is sacred. The value of men, the value of women, the value of children, those are constants. They are intended to give us stable and happy life. Don't toy with them. Don't play with them. Don't threaten those institutions and those creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when values have been determined in the West that everything is relative, the principle of relativism, that what you see as important, I see as unimportant, and everything is now subject to a fight between me and you. Any two people, any two societies can keep fighting. We see this in reality. We saw this when Hitler took over Italy, Germany, and the result is known. Nobody needs to talk about it. So when you follow even one person with his own idea, you can destroy not only yourself, but others around you. We also see here in the United States that when we let some people follow somebody whose mindset is one of a king's mindset, not a president, but we turn him into a president, he turns resentful that we are only making him a president. He wants to be a king. And that's why he is fighting and inciting everybody who listens to him to crown him as the United States' next king. If this happens, we know what the results would be. So, don't you think I'm turning politics here? I'm giving you vivid examples. When we live by trial and error, what do we get? So Allah tells us, choose your leaders from among us, the most righteous ones amongst you, the most knowledgeable ones amongst you. And we choose otherwise, we betray our trust. We betray our trust. So, we Muslims are not against experimentation, but in the fields where Allah told us to experiment, not in the fields He has already determined how it should be. Allah told us that the family is central for the human society. He told us that men and women ought to cooperate, each in their own lane. Allah has enabled women with things that man cannot do. And He has gifted man with certain capacity that women cannot do. And if they do it at the expense of their primary mission that man can never do. So we have to humble ourselves. The reason we go deep and further into experimentation with values and principles and constants in our life is because we tend to become, the more we become powerful as humans, the more arrogant we become, the less obedient we become, the less submissive we become. While Allah gives us to humble us, instead we become arrogant. It is like when you gift your child something that's unusual, you end up creating a tendency of uselessness, that what you give him becomes of no value. It's easy to destroy, and we see this phenomenon in countries where money and wealth is beyond people's use. So they get their children a Bugatti or Lamborghini or these sports cars, and those kids, they use it to play with them like toys. $250,000 car is used as a toy. And when it is destroyed, parents give them another one. So we are nurturing, and I know that that's not who we are, but I'm giving an example that when man is given way and above and beyond what man needs, man becomes very arrogant, and anything in our hand becomes useless. It has no value, very disposable. And when we underestimate the value of things, we are also underestimating our own value. Because things are made for us. When they have no value, what we produce have no value as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts to accept His message and to follow His message and to succeed in our mission and in submission to Him. Ameen. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفوته من خلقه وحبيبه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. When we want to develop new medications, we humans try it first on rats, mice, right? Animals. And that's okay, because Allah has created those things for us to manipulate and use for our own benefit. It doesn't mind. But when we play and toy with our values that should give us happiness and stability, we turn our own selves We turn each other as humans into our own guinea pigs. And I'm using that term intentionally. Imagine that if you walk with where people are going, whether they are majority you agree with or minority you agree with, which is against the first choice, which is to go with Allah, right? Then you turn yourself into a guinea pig. They are trying, they are using you for an experiment, whether it is communism or capitalism or atheism. Our relationship with Allah is damaged more by surrendering as guinea pigs to anyone than anything else. We should never surrender as guinea pigs to anyone. And that means we should never be experimenting with our own values and our own lives. What happens when we experience with our own values, moralities, ethics, laws? What happens is we have conflicting views. If what is just in my view is different from what is just in your view, how do we conduct sales? One young man was reiterating something in front of me a few days ago. He was saying that the East and the West, they have not agreed on the voltage of the current, but alhamdulillah that they have agreed that the day is 24 hours and the hour is still 60 minutes and the minute is still 60 seconds. You see, because when everything is thrown off the base, then everything is possible. And everything has no value in terms of our stability and our benefit. But when we experiment with physical creation and nature in a positive way, for the purpose of developing nature and what it has to provide, we gain the fruits of those experimentations. So you can manipulate plants, you can make bigger fruits or whatever, genetic development and stuff like this, which some people are critical of, but those are within the realm of experimentation. When we discover that something is bad, we can change it. But when we destroy a single family, there is no way you can bring it back. It's next to impossible. It's next to impossible. When you destroy a human life, it is impossible to bring it back. When you destroy the values that we all share and hold dear, and use as stable sources and a cohesive glue for the human society, when we do this, we are rendering ourselves and our societies as guinea pigs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us cross that experimentation and keep it in its fields. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا ومتعنا اللهم بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقوتنا ما أحييتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا ولا إلى النار مصيرنا وإذا أردت بقومنا فتنة فنجنا منها مولانا غير خزايا ولا مفتونين ولا مبدلين ولا مغيرين. اللهم لا تدع لنا في يومنا هذا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا مبتلا إلا عافيته ولا سائلا إلا أعطيته ولا فقيرا إلا أغنيته ولا ضالا إلا هديته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا ظالما إلا قصمته. اللهم عليك بالظالمين والمعتدين والجبارين في الأرض فإنهم لا يعجزونك. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم، فستذكرون ما أقول لكم، وأفوض أمري إلى الله، إن الله بصير بالعباد. وأقم الصلاة.